Muy buenos días, buenas tardes, buenas noches. Muchas gracias por acompañarnos en otro Conversando Concisos. Mi nombre es Edgar Rojas desde Estados Unidos y hoy nos acompaña Mike Kiser de SailPoint. Vamos a hablar con él acerca de ChatGPT, el tema de éticas, el tema de cómo utilizar esta herramienta correctamente y temas de privacidad y transparencia de datos, privacidad más que todo. Y eso pues conlleva con la invitación a que nos acompañes en el CISO's Latin Summit el 17 y 18 de mayo. Mike Kiser nos va a acompañar junto con otros líderes de la industria en el CISO's Latin Summit, un evento exclusivo para CISOs y directores de ciberseguridad de Latinoamérica. El enfoque del evento es privacidad, transparencia de datos. Vamos a tener muchas sesiones con estos líderes, sesiones de trabajo. Así que los invito a que nos visiten tacticalers.co, se registren. Tenemos cupo para 50 CISOs máximo y ahí se acabó el problema. Ok, entonces vamos a conversar con Mike acerca de ChatGPT. Vámonos a inglés. So Mike, thank you so much for being here. I'm looking forward to welcoming you to Cartagena one more time.
Oh yeah, I'm totally excited. It's going to be a great time, I think.
It's like your home, your second home, Cartagena.
My home away from Texas, exactly.
Exactly. And so before we go start talking about ChatGPT, so Cartagena, the CISO's Latin Summit is going to be about privacy and data transparency, right? How CISOs use it and everything. Quickly, you send me your topic today. I haven't posted it yet, but your topic is freaking amazing. What is it based on? Because you mentioned that it was based on the Starlink and all that stuff.
Yeah. Those of you who are familiar with SpaceX and Starlink, it's an illustration of a larger problem. Starlink, is putting lots and lots and lots and lots of satellites up there. I think back in February of 2022, they launched 49 of them. And by like a day later, 40 of them were useless. Part of that's the strategy. Part of it speaks to a larger problem that since the beginning of space exploration, nations have just rushed to launch objects into space and then they forget about them, right? And there's an easy parallel, right? There's an easy parallel between this leftover space debris that's not only just forgotten, abandoned, but like super dangerous. It's traveling like at 18,000 miles an hour or something like that, fast enough to put a chip in the windshield of the International Space Station. Anyway, it's the same thing that people are doing in our organizations. Oh, yeah, there we go.
I got to fix it.
Same thing we're doing in our organizations, right? Like data is fine in structured applications. Even there it's kind of problematic, but once somebody takes it out of there and puts it in a Word doc or a spreadsheet or something, and then launches it into some kind of cloud sharing facility, for instance, now it's just orbiting your business, right? And why we do it? Because it's easy, right? I want to send Ed this document. I'm not going to like attach it. I'm just going to copy a link and throw the link at you. And then, I'm not going to have to worry about it, right? But I'm going to forget about it. And now it's just sitting out there and it's nothing but risk. And so the workshop session that I'm doing is going to explore that parallel between space exploration and how nations and organizations are looking at this problem of space debris, how they might detect it, how they might govern it, how they might fix it, right? And see if we can apply some of those lessons to how we handle data in our organizations. And looking forward to it.
And that goes nice hand in hand with Wendy Nather's subject about the chemistry of data. And her topic is freaking amazing also. Similar to and it applies perfectly to the cloud. Because what she says, we have controls to protect data, but that's today. Tomorrow, those requirements for the protection changes because the privacy and transparency requirements are fluid, but not our control. So how do we do it? It's going to be amazing sessions. And come and join us. Let's talk about ChatGPT. So ChatGPT, Mike, how long has ChatGPT been around right now?
oh, like what, 5, 6 months? Was it November, October, something of last year?
Yeah. And I
And
started
it,
using it personally, I think sometime in January. I'm like, all right, let me freaking try this. Let's see what it's all about. And what was your experience when you first used ChatGPT? That way we'll see if we are
sure. Well, it's a little odd because I have a background in using some of this conversational AI. I've used Markov chains before. I had my own neural net that I used to enhance privacy by faking social media content with a text generator. But that could do it, and you could submit material for it to learn from, so it would kind of mimic whatever the voice was, like Shakespeare or whatever else. But it still, at times, whenever you used it, it still kind of felt like every fifth time you would use it, and it would sound like you had fallen in the bathtub and hit your head and started tweeting or something, just kind of random and nonsensical. So I think ChatGPT is the latest iteration of that, but it's a lot more sophisticated. You can't, it's a lot more opaque as to how they're doing things. It doesn't feel like, a
Okay,
program.
so you already came in with an idea as to what it
I
is doing,
did.
and you thought, this is almost the same but more sophisticated. Okay.
Yeah.
Me, on the
What
other
about
hand,
your reaction?
yeah, my reaction was, holy shit, this is a game changer. This is a game
Yeah.
changer, and I think a lot of us, the majority, came in and we're like, this is not Google. This is amazing, right?
Yeah.
And then I find out that we've been trained, and unfortunately, we've been trained by Google, and that everything that we Google, well, Google says it's true, right? And that's when Pablo Brower's workshop in the last CISO's Latin Summit in October was about disinformation, warfare, disinformation, right? And we've been trained to do that, and so I think that's one of the reasons why ChatGPT has been accepted so rapidly, because somebody showed me a slide today about how long it took different companies to get to, like, I don't know, million users or 100 million users. And it took ChatGPT like this much. And I think Twitter or some this long. It was incredible how quickly he was accepted.
Yeah. The growth rates or the adoption rates, it's always fascinating to see when the technology hits. If you think about it, we've also been trained not only by Google to trust, that kind of information, but also by any personal assistant. Hey, Google, Siri, Alexa, we're already used to saying, hey, tell me about this, and getting this unsourced information, right? Not only that, but how many little kids in Amazon households um, are used to the word Alexa as a name? Like that wasn't really a name before, but they can say it, right? And that speaks to the idea that we're used to it, or we were prepped for it to have a personality. And I think that's part of the difference, right? It's not just that it generates content, but it feels like
Yeah,
it's an entity or a friend or a frenemy or
yeah.
something,
It's
right?
like it's like I viewed it at the beginning as a very smart professor. So I was always very polite, and it's funny because everybody's always, "Oh, thank you so much for the information provided." Right? We're all there provide. We forget that we're speaking to a machine. Um,
Yeah.
and as I progress on my travels of my experience using this, as Pablo, this weekend I hit it. I'm like, damn, now I understand what this is all about. And Pablo Brewer in our channel called it, I said, it has reached the trough of disillusionment with ChatGPT. I was
The
like,
relationship has hit a rocky patch.
oh
Right.
my God, it was so bad. And that's when I realized. So I started realizing that on Thursday. I was doing research for an article on ransomware that I'm writing, and 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 I was using ChatGPT because I think ChatGPT is a good tool if you know how to use it properly. And and I realized, right, like we always know, we already know, it goes up to 2021. But then we know that we can feed it some information, and then we can tell it, give me a summary, because that's what it's there for. Give me a summary on all this information I just gave you, right? And it's supposed to give it back to you. However, as part of the research and the proper ethical use of the tool, you don't just copy and paste the damn thing, right? You put it into a Word document. I put it into a Word document. Then I review those things and to make sure that it makes sense. And Mike, I found out that a couple of things that he was saying, I'm like, I don't think that's right. And what he had done, then I look back at all the research that I shared with him. And what he had done is had taken parts of one paragraph and put it together with parts of another paragraph, because in its simulation or in its assessment, they were similar to each other. So it doesn't comprehend what is right, what is catching.
Yeah.
So it's made of some shit up. And I'm like, that's not right.
So you're saying that's not what you were looking for? That's
It's
not what you were going for?
No, I don't mind. It's not like what I'm looking for. But don't make stuff up. In fact, it's funny because I told it, I said, hey, give me this thing. Because I was like, where the hell did you get this from? I'm like, give me the same article, but give it to me with the references where you're getting those, right? Based on the information I gave you. So it did. And I'm like, oh, good, there's a reference. So I click on the first reference, 404. I clicked on the second reference, 404. I'm like, wait a second. I clicked on the third, 404. It makes things up, Mike. Stupid thing, make things up.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's that's why it's dangerous, right? It's a good tool, but a couple of things. The other thing I added to its success was ease of use.
Yes.
Look at FaceApp, look at Lensa AI most recently, right? People loved it and people play with it because it was in a format they knew how to consume and it was easy to use. They didn't have to know jack. They didn't have to know anything about how it worked, how to set it up. Same kind of thing with OpenAI, right? When you have journalists who can go out and play with a tool and do their own reporting, well, now you have exactly what you're talking about, right? This compressed cycle of, first come the emotional, it's going to replace everybody, emotional headlines, and then, but I dated ChatGPT, all these kinds of things, right? And it finds its place, and then the hype wears off, and you realize maybe it's not, not as alarming as we thought it was going to be, right? I don't know.
So
like we're shifting. I think we're shifting at this point, like you said. Once you get past the hype cycle and into the trough, you start to realize, okay, how can I use this, right? But then you start to see problems because we're going to have issues with what I'll call authenticity, right? Like if I do a math problem, if you say, hey, what's 39 times 73? And I give you the number, you're not going to assume that I did it in my head. By the way, I can't do that in my head. Maybe way back when I was a teenager. But what you probably thought I used a computer or a calculator, right? Because I've ceded control for that, right? We've given up on basic math. Presumably, we haven't given up on writing, though, on creating language. And that's what this steers us towards, right? Like if you say you generate this material on ransomware or whatever, and you give it to me, my first reaction is not going to be, oh, he used a chatbot to generate this. I'm going to think, well, Ed read a bunch of books and wrote all this down. And man, Ed's a literary wizard, which may or may not be true. You might be a literary wizard, right? But I think there are huge implications for authorship, much like stable diffusion and generating art, through visual stuff. Copyright violations and similar to the DALL-E generator, right? They're being stable diffusion. The underlying technology is being sued by Getty Images.
Making their images, yeah.
Because the Getty trademark is in some of the generated art, which is kind of a dead giveaway. ChatGPT is a lot harder though, right? Because how do you know it's not?
But yes, I know, because you use it, I'm using it. We know, we know, even if we never read a person their style of writing, we're like, oh, that's ChatGPT. I don't know how, but our brains know.
Maybe though, but ChatGPT can simulate voices, can simulate writers better than the tools I've used before. I asked it to write a screenplay about something. What was it? Fishing or something stupid, right? I said in the style of old film noir from the 1940s United States, right? And it did a great job. Like, it's a dark room. She walks in. Private Eye's got his feet on the desk. She's like, I'm looking for my data. You know, it's ridiculous. Yeah. But it was pretty spot on, complete with stage directions, right? And so then I was like, oh, okay. I changed it. I said, okay, now write a play, not about that, but write a play about a romantic comedy, including a duck, right? Just to see what it would do. Yeah. I thought it would start over. It didn't. It picked up where it left off and said, you know, she dropped her duck or something, and then I looked into each other's eyes, and it was like it was terrible writing, yeah. But it was of the right, you know, voice and everything. I was not going to win an Oscar. Yeah. I mean, who knows these days? I don't know.
Yeah, but again, I mean, so you're using it for fun and stuff like that. One of the things that is beginning to bother me, and I think as I get older, I understand the statement about get off my lawn, you know, the old man. Because we discussed this in our private channel about this is going to start giving, you know, the infamous thought leaders more ammunition, right? And you start seeing it, and the thing that upsets me a lot, Mike, is that they think that they're so smart and everybody else is so stupid, and that pisses me off like crazy. I'm like, you're gonna pass this as your own, and it's not your own. Why don't you put a disclaimer? So personally, I want to start putting in there. This article was written using ChatGPT as an assistant, or something like that. Right?
Yeah, I mean, I have strong feelings about that. I mean, it also depends on the environment, right? If you're talking about, say, a university course, well, now professors are requiring their students because, you know, for a long time they've had plagiarism checking, where to make sure you didn't just copy something wholesale, right? But with ChatGPT, it's not going to be just copied from some other place. It's going to be generated procedurally. So it gets a lot harder. So what they're starting to shift to, believe it or not, is in-person handwritten essays for exams. So no more typing, because they have to be able to see that you generated it in the room right then. Otherwise, how can they trust that? Who wouldn't do that, right? I mean, people are people, right? I have a theology degree, so I have strong opinions on that too. That give people a tool for bad behavior, bad acting, they're going to do it, right? So the question, that seems like a cut and dry case, right? Like academia, exams, that seems like ethically, morally wrong to use ChatGPT, right? But the case you give, thought leaders, I guarantee you, it's more of a gray area, because I guarantee you there is not an executive on the planet that doesn't have his own PR or her own marketing department writing on her behalf. And then they may not even read it. It just goes out, right? To whatever, reputable play. So I don't disagree, but they're not going to put, is there a difference between ghostwriting by a human and ghostwriting by ChatGPT?
No.
It still bugs me. I think they both bug me. I'm with you. I'm like, I want to yell at clouds going by, right? Like, because, yeah.
Again, in this conversation that we had, it's like, use it as a tool to help you accelerate the process, but don't use it as the creator. You have to do something. Otherwise, don't just, I asked her the question and this is the information I got, so I want to share with you the answer.
Yeah, I mean, I have pretty strong, like I would argue that if you use ChatGPT to generate something, ChatGPT should get the byline. You should not. I also have the same opinion of ghostwriting, but that'll never happen, right? I also feel like if your marketing or PR department wrote it for you, it's them, not you, right? In fact, I have friends that work in those areas, and if I see a piece for a company they work for, I know their voice well enough that I'll call them up and say, "Hey, that was a really good piece you had in dark reading or whatever," and they're like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Yeah, you just wanted you to know that someone knew that you're the." Author, So I don't know.
Where do you see this going? So Microsoft right now with Bing, they started coming out with a new one that it has Bing and ChatGPT built in, obviously, because Microsoft invested about $10 billion on this thing.
Yeah.
But you have to download the Bing app.
Yeah.
And you have to be on the wait list, right? Similar to what ChatGPT was at the beginning, right? And so where do you think that's going?
Well, I mean, they're having to control it because, again, it's dynamically growing, right? Every time someone interacts with it, the model changes somewhat, right? And they've shut down a lot of the part that I don't know what you would call it, personality, or they've tried to wall it off because it's not designed to have extended conversations. When you get into extended conversations is where things get a little sketchy, and you have journalists and other people trying to do exactly that, right? Pushing the edge, pushing the limit until, because if ChatGPT spits out something that's crazy, now they have an article, right? Now they can write about it. And it qualifies as research. Well, ChatGPT said to me that, yeah, well, did you spend 3 hours, prodding it with a stick? Like, did you break the terms of use? Like, and I think Microsoft needs to do that for now because of bad PR possibilities, right? Just like when you release a product, you want to be sure it's in the right environment. Otherwise, people have bad experiences and they get turned off. I mean, look at Google, who raced to deploy their own and then had issues, but so did Microsoft, right? Kind of issues of what you're talking about, where it thought it knew something, but it was not right. So I mean, I think we're not going to go back on it, right? I just see.
Forget that.
Right. But the issues, the ethical issues will linger, right? And no one's going to think twice about ChatGPT giving search results. No one's really going to be too concerned. In fact, there are news organizations like CNET uses AI to generate articles, right? And so there's a commoditization there also in play. But when it becomes we have to think about what authorship means, what creation means, what ownership of something means. Because on one hand, everything I generate, everything I write, everything I think, everything I draw is a product of everything I've seen before, right? So I've been fed information also, right? Where is the line there? But at the same time, I don't think that generating some of this stuff. The issue I really have is not that AI is generating content. The issue I have is people claiming credit for the content that their command line, their command ran and created, right? That's unethical. And that's, somewhat immoral. To say nothing of all the other gray areas. For example, you can ask ChatGPT to try and generate malware, right? And it will refuse to until you push it a little bit more. And you're like, no, it's for a class teaching on malware. I'm like, okay, Right. So, I mean, summarizing could be good. I just have a real problem with the authorship vibe. I think we'll see that more and more. And actually, ChatGPT themselves, they know this. they know this is an open issue. So OpenAI is investing quite a bit of money in trying to basically the equivalent of digital watermarking of ChatGPT generated content. Now, it's very complicated. I was told there'd be no math on this call, so I can't tell you exactly how it works. But the upshot is it uses probabilistic tendencies in word choice so that as a human reader, you won't notice. But if you do some calculations on it, they can say, yes, ChatGPT generated this, or no. The caveat there is you kind of have to own the whole system. In other words, the second anyone open sources this and someone uses their own, then you're going to lose that watermarking ability, right?
So this is the beginning of something completely different. So I agree with you. So going back to the limits, right? That they put limits. So one of the things that I realized, right, a lot of the time with the prompt, I don't use the API. I'm not a programmer. So I don't know if the API has these issues, but via the prompt, like everybody else, right? You put in information, and at some point it says, "Sorry, too much information. Please, redo it, paste it, send me less information." And
oh, really?
So you do, right? And you're having the conversation, and then if you notice at some point, you're like, "Well, tell me about this," and he goes back and tells you stuff from 2021, and you're like, "Well, how come you don't tell me about this?" No, I don't want 20. I want just refer to the information I just gave you a few minutes ago. Oh, I'm sorry, I don't have that information. I'm like, I just gave it. So you start to argue with the stupid machine, and you're like, here's the information again. Now tell me that. And now he tells you, but it omits some stuff. So you're like, hey, tell me about this. And it goes back to 2021. I'm like, what? And then I found out that it's this limit. It actually forgets. It forgets when you give it a lot of information, as you said, right? They put a limit. I didn't understand this. They put a limit, so it doesn't retain that information. It has that information on the conversations, but it's got a maximum buffer, I guess, and then it overwrites.
Yeah. I think because it gets in uncomfortable places, or something when you have too much content, right? I mean,
crazy.
It's interesting. I think the calculator analogy is good, right? Because we don't do math anymore. We don't do grammar anymore. We may teach our kids grammar, but then they just turn on Grammarly or whatever else, and right? And if I ask my friends to actually write stuff out, there's no way they write none of us do right anymore. So the question you have to ask yourself too is, what else are you going to cede? Are you going to give over to something like ChatGPT, right? Coding is very possible, I think. It may not be refined yet.
It's not refined.
But
but again, this weekend, when I gave up using it for the article thing, I want to put that away. I got to think through it. How am I going to do it better? And then this weekend I ended up using it for a project, a personal project. And I'm like, hey, can you help me write a CSS, HTML table by using CSS grid? And it did. So I'm like, oh, good. So then I start building it, and I know some HTML. I'm not an expert on it, right? But you start to give it asking for information, and it starts giving it to you. Dude, in 2 days, I wrote a really nice website for this tool that I'm going to be releasing soon, and this framework. And I realized, and I shared that with the team, right, internally. It's like, I hate ChatGPT. And then later I said, oh, if you ask stupid questions to ChatGPT, it's going to reply to you with stupid answers. And you're never going to find out what's going on unless you know about the subject. So that's something else I learned. If you're going to use ChatGPT to create content for something, you better know something about that content. Otherwise, how are you going to know it's not giving you crap.
Right. But the second you hand that around, no one's going to know. And the writing is going to be a high enough level in English that it's going to be trustable, right? If you get on Wikipedia and someone is just misspelling words and doesn't make any sense, and you're like, but if somebody gets on and uses huge words in correct ways, you go, oh, this person knows a 3-syllable word, so obviously they know about, swallows or birds or something ridiculous, right? The same thing happens here. Like it's so well written that you're like, well, this must be true.
It must be true. I mean, that's
right?
I used it one day when we started working with this as a team, and when you remember, I'm like, I wonder what how Umberto Eco will write. I'm freezing my ass. As I told
Right.
ChatGPT, remember that? Writing Umberto Eco's voice, I'm freezing my
Yeah.
ass. And it gives something about my hindquarters losing some bodily heat. I'm freaking laughing. I'm like, yeah, that's Umberto Eco.
That sounds
Yeah,
pretty much. Well, and also you have to think about the flip our discussion a little bit. We're talking about ethical issues and how it can be used. Right now, I'd have to look it up, but right now I'm pretty sure ChatGPT is primarily English.
no, I use it in Spanish.
Have you used it in Spanish?
I use it in Spanish, and
Okay.
I use it again. The way that I use it, Mike, is not to create 100% for me, but to help me with the creative juices. Give me a starting point, and I'll take it from
Right.
there, right? And so I use it for on LinkedIn. When I want to announce about the event, right? At some point, dude, I've exhausted. How am I gonna say like I need Umberto Eco to come in here and tell me, give me a different way of inviting people, CISOs, to come to the event, right? And so I have exhausted, and it becomes repetitive. So I use it, and it's amazing for that.
Right.
But again, you have to know what you're looking for. Take that and edit it so that you're happy with it. I never ever done a copy paste from ChatGPT. Directly.
What is your opinion of ChatGPT in Spanish?
It's good.
Does it read okay? Does it read well?
Yes. It
Okay,
writes.
because the knowledge base, I think the knowledge base was trained on English. So I was surprised because I haven't heard of a lot of people using. So it may be trained on English, and then like I assume it's a wide range of languages at this point.
Translation built in, so it might be trained in English, but yeah, translation is perfect. And I haven't used it. I mean, German, so you should try it, or when you should try it in German and see what you get.
Yeah, we should try different, because I'd be interested to hear. I need to think of use cases where there would be, depending on which language you're thinking in, your view would be fundamentally different, right? And so I wonder if you get that coming out, right?
Yeah,
if you pose you pose a question in Spanish, but the translation. I wonder how it does that. I'll have to look that up. I haven't seen anybody doing that yet.
Yeah, no.
We've got our next article. We can have ChatGPT write it. Perfect.
Well, that's the whole idea of the conversation, Mike. We don't get to do that. And again, right? It's the way that I see it is it's a freaking amazing tool, right? If you never used it or you're beginning to use it, you have to go to the learning curve. You have to use it. You have to think, wow, nobody's gonna know. You have to go through that. There's nothing wrong with that, right? The only thing that I think, what you and I are saying, and many others are saying, don't use it and then copy paste it as it comes out and pass it as your own. That's basically what we're saying, right?
Right. I don't have any trust in humanity to do that, but that's exactly what we're saying. Look, I could spend time and write this document for 30 minutes to a couple hours, or I can have ChatGPT generate most of it, if not all of it, and I'll just tweak it a little bit.
Well, so there are two different things, right? Those are two different things. So I want to be honest here because I have nothing to hide. When I create, emails inviting CISOs and stuff like that, I do it in Spanish, right? I do it in ChatGPT, and everybody freaking knows that. They should, maybe not, but people know that, right? And I take it,
Yeah.
I look at it, I make some minor edits here and there, but all in all, it's way better than I could have written in Spanish, right? I'm not a copywriter.
Right.
That's not what I do,
Right.
right? So I take it and I send it, but that's an email, right? If
Right.
I'm posting an article, that's a completely different freaking thing. That I use it to help me. So I did my research. I feed it multiple pieces of information, and I ask it to give me some bullet points summarizing, because that's what AI is there for. Take a look at all that information, connect the dots for me, things that I haven't seen, and then help me understand these articles better. And then I take that information and I create the article. But I'm not letting ChatGPT write the article for me. Right? Where's
the line? I'm not being argumentative. It's an open question, right? Like, and I totally agree. Email, nobody cares, right? A better formatted, better written email gets more responses. Great, right? If you're writing for the Nobel Prize Committee or something,
that's a different story.
Maybe not. Maybe don't. So I don't think anyone has a handle on where that threshold changes, and it's different for everybody, right? Because morality is relative.
But I tell you one thing: morality is relative. But if you 100% copy and paste from ChatGPT into LinkedIn, you have zero morals. To me, that's
right.
In that regard, right?
Right. I'm saying, I don't think morality is relative. In my heart of hearts, it's more, I think that's the reality. And so what we tend to do is we tend to adopt technology and then go, oh, we should probably figure out if that's a good or a bad thing. Like facial recognition stuff. That's a whole other dumpster.
Oh, it's a different stuff. Wait till they put ChatGPT into facial recognition crap. Then it'll become really scary. But anyway, we're going to have great conversations in Cartagena about this stuff and many others. So, Mike, thank you so much for being here. And question: did ChatGPT help you write your summary for the?
Never. In fact, I just got done talking to someone who tried to ghostwrite an article for me today, and I was like, no. Like, yeah. Anyway, it's all good.
All right. So looking forward to welcome you again in Cartagena in May. It's gonna be amazing. It's gonna be you, Andrea, Wendy, TK,
yep,
and Veronica from CISO as well.
Phenomenal. Yeah, it's gonna be awesome.
There's 2 or 3 more coming up announcements, but it'll be fantastic. So again, everyone, tacticaledge.co, come on down, have a conversation about ChatGPT, satellites, privacy, and everything else with Mike and others. Appreciate it, Mike.
Yep. Thanks for having me on. Thanks for inviting me down again. It's going to be amazing.
Absolutely.